I grew up in Auburn, New York, which is a small town of about 30,000 people. And directly in the middle of our town, we have a maximum security prison. Growing up there, I sort of knew the basics about the prison, that it was one of the oldest in New York State, that it was one of the highest employer within the county. But I didn't really know a lot about prisons or prison culture, what that was doing to my community. So Auburn is one of the first places is the first place to have execution by electrocution, and it was the host of certain correctional practices that started in our prison, such as solitary confinement, lock step, that moved on to other prisons across the country and are still implemented in many prisons. So I began to realize that Auburn had this really large role beyond my community within prisons. And as I started to photograph to sort of figure out more about the prison and my role within the community as a young person, I realized I just started to question its role quite a bit.
This body of work is fairly new. I've been working for about a year in the Florida prison system, photographing parent-child bonding visits. So I've been photographing in about 12 different men's and women's prisons in the state of Florida, looking at intimacy in the carceral space, looking at the effects of parental incarceration on children, and also looking at these visits as a kind of fantasy fulfillment for parent and child, which I think that are a context that most people can relate to. I think what is so challenging about documenting prisons is finding a way to do it where people, a broader audience, can relate to the narratives, and I think anybody can relate to either being a parent or a child of somebody. So that is the backbone of this particular series, with the social residence that these visits are being somewhat disallowed throughout the country at this point. We're moving towards more video visitation now, which is making it not possible for children to have contact with their parent, when it shows that it's quite traumatic when a child is unable to have that kind of intimacy with an incarcerated parent.
Ellenville, for over 150 years, was famous for making knives. At the peak of their business in around 2002-ish, they had about 700 people making knives. Until one day, in 2004, they sent them all home. And that began something of a death spiral for the town. The first thing I noticed was that with the knife factory gone, the largest employer in town became the prison, which is a maximum security prison that houses about 900 to 1,000 people, many of whom are from New York City. And this prison exists separated from the town. It's not like in Joe's work where it's integrated so in a very peculiar way. In our town, it's very much separate, and there's this sort of looming box that's invisible on the inside. So I was curious to understand the relationship between the loss of this employment and the growth of the prison industrial complex in the country as a whole.